What has happened to the Republican Party and how long has it been happening? First, they got rid of liberal Republicans. Then they started getting rid of responsible Republicans who would never dream of bringing the country to the brink of fiscal calamity by refusing to raise the debt ceiling. And now they are on the verge of nominating a candidate who John Oliver calls a serial liar. Will Donald Trump destroy the Republican Party? At least one Republican hopes so, and that is exactly why he voted for Donald Trump yesterday. Joining us now is that Republican economist Bruce Bartlett. He served in the Treasury Department under President George H.W. Bush. Also with us, William Saletan, national correspondent for Slate. Bruce, so there's no one I know who's more opposed to Donald Trump than you are. You voted yesterday in Virginia, I assume?
Yes.
Voted for Donald Trump.
Yes, I did.
Explain yourself, sir.
Well, my goal is to try to destroy the Republican Party, frankly. I think only when it has reached rock bottom can responsible Republicans once again come back and make it a reasonable governing party. Right now, it is just a coalition of cranks and racists and bigots and religious kooks and people associated with the Tea Party who really have taken control of it since 2010. And they have to be run out of the party completely. And I think Trump is the vehicle that will allow that to happen. I think if he gets the nomination, and I hope he does, he will go down to a historic defeat. I think the Republican establishment will have no choice but to disown him. I think there will be a very substantial Republicans for Hillary effort, and I think that he will lose disastrously and hopefully bring down a lot of Republican senators and congressmen with him.
William Saletan, my sense is that this pebble started rolling down the hill actually decades ago in a way that we didn't perceive, that we just thought was increased tension of certain kinds. But then in the last few years, certainly under the Obama administration, the Republicans in Washington have been promising more and more impossible dreams in the face of legislative realities. And so here we are with the guy who promises them anything.
That's exactly right. I think what Bruce said is correct. The Republican Party, as it's constituted today, doesn't actually stand for anything in particular. What it stands against liberalism, and that's not exactly coherent either. So what the Republican Party has become now is the party that's against Barack Obama. Everything Barack Obama stands for. Now, if Republicans had been right that Barack Obama was a crazy leftist, then by opposing him at every turn, which is what they've done, they would have made their party a moderate, centrist, politically popular party. Instead, Obama was a moderate, a practical centrist, and therefore, by opposing him at every turn, by opposing, by holding the nation's credit rating hostage in the debt ceiling talks, by coming out against the Iran deal when they had no alternative but war, by becoming the party that's against not just illegal but legal immigration, they have pushed their party to the extreme. And that is what has left them in the situation where Donald Trump now represents their voters.
Bruce, I think I know what Ted Cruz and Rush Limbaugh and the Rush Limbaugh wing of the Republican Party are going to say if Donald Trump is the nominee and if he loses big in November. They're going to say what they always say: we didn't nominate a true conservative. Donald Trump wasn't a true conservative. That was our big mistake.
Well, of course they will say that, but I think that history shows that after a party loses the presidency enough times, there are enough people in that party who really, really want to win that they will put aside crazy ideology and look at somebody based on, not on ideology, but based on electability. Now, I don't know who or if there's a Republican out there who could win in 2020, but none of the guys running this year can possibly win, in my opinion.
William, one of the things that strikes me about the Trump campaign, and and shows you just how it's shattering the Republican Party, is that he does go in there and say things that no Republican has ever said before, like, no, George W. Bush did not keep us safe. 9/11 happened on his watch. The Iraq War was a giant mistake. It was thought impossible for a viable Republican presidential candidate to say either one of those things before Donald Trump said them.
Oh, yeah. And look, Republican voters, anybody who's voting for Trump, they love this. They love it when he takes down these heresies. The problem is that what these voters are voting for, they're not actually voting for a policy when they do that. They're just voting for a guy who vents. And the problem is that the Republican Party has become a party of venting. It has ceased to be a party of governing. It hasn't held the White House for the entire term of Barack Obama. It hasn't taken seriously the job of running Congress. It stages what Marco Rubio, its own presidential candidate, calls show votes, everything just voting against Obamacare again and again. And so they've gotten out of the habit of actually making policy. They vent their spleen, and now they have a candidate who says things. The voters love it. But as you pointed out earlier, there is no agenda behind it. There's no position paper that actually represents a policy that could solve any of these problems.
And Bruce, this is the party that gave Sarah Palin the vice presidential nomination 8 years ago, actually put her up as someone who they all said at the time absolutely ready to take over the presidency in a blink of an eye. This seems to flow from that.
Actually, I think it goes back even earlier to Dan Quayle, who you remember.
Yes.
His chief of staff was Bill Kristol, and he took this guy who I occasionally had occasion to work with in the Bush administration, and the guy, there was no there. And I think that's where they got the idea that somebody like Sarah Palin could be controlled and manipulated to be a talking head with people like Bill Kristol pulling the strings. And that didn't really work, but and the result now is that they've so dumbed down their party that Trump is viable.
Bruce Bartlett, thank you for sharing your voting strategy with us tonight. Really appreciate it. And William